Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 in the morning, Monday morning, February the 14th, Valentine's Day, and I'm going to be here. This is one child abuse survivor to another. Well, for 30 minutes, it's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. I'm just opening up the chat room right now. I had to kind of go in a back way. The Skype connection between myself and Blog Talk Radio is not working, and lots of problems with Blog Talk Radio this last at least 2 weeks, so I don't know what's going on. I did manage to get in just by dialing in myself and on using a different number. So hopefully everybody will get something out of this show. I know last week we were talking about this particular PDF that I found regarding attachment and bonding in like early infant stages, and taking a look at what happens to children when they're maltreated and they don't. There's no proper attachment for them. There's no proper bonding between, especially maternal attachment, the maternal bond. And so I want to take a look at that. And so hopefully, you guys will get something out of this. I know that I am. And it's from www.childtrauma.org. That's where this PDF came from. And it's about 10 pages long. It's not all that long, but it is some good information for people. And so thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate you all being here and and listening to my shows, and I've done so many shows. It's 580 shows now. So thanks everybody for taking the time to listen to my stuff. And I'm not a counselor or therapist. I have to say this on every show. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows, and I just want to be one more voice out there for people who have, maybe survivors of child abuse and might be, just thinking they're on their own and that there isn't any help or hope, and that's just not true. And there is lots of help and hope. You have to hang on. You have to hang in there. And you have to. Quite often, you have to be the one to reach out first, and that's the whole issue. I didn't reach out until just not that long ago. I didn't start my healing journey until 4 years ago, and I didn't really start reaching out until about 2 years ago. So at least a year and a half to 2 years. So yeah, I didn't realize. I thought somebody was going to be able to just reach into me, but I didn't realize I was going to have to be the one to reach out, right? So that's why I just wanted to be one more voice for people, and also to speak out against child abuse and stand up for child rights. So that's why I'm doing these shows. And so you have to listen at your own discretion, because I'm talking topics of abuse, and abuse is very sensitive material, right? A lot of people find it very uncomfortable. So if you are, sensitive to the topics of abuse, then you need to know what's good for you to listen to. And if it's going to bother you, then ultimately it's your discretion to turn it off. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, you have to have permission to listen to my shows, because I believe in protecting children at all times, young people under the age of 18. You need to learn how to keep yourself safe online. And, you need to know how to protect yourself, especially when there's a chat room present. And there's a lot of adult content on my show, and I think young people should have someone listen to the show with you, and that way they can sort of, help you make a decision whether you should be listening to my show or not. So that's why I ask that young people under the age of 18 have permission to listen to my show. So thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. We're looking at bonding and attachment in maltreated children, consequences of emotional neglect in childhood, from the Child Trauma Academy, www.childtraumaacademy.org. And we were looking at this last week, written by Bruce D. Perry, this particular article, MD, PhD. And we were just talking about, the necessity for this bond, this attachment to take place in infancy. There's a real, without it can cause all kinds of problems later on in life, because this bond is what allows us to be able to feel comfortable having relationships, secure attachments with people, feeling sense of security, and if you grow up without that without that bond, without that emotional glue, without that attachment, and without a proper normal attachment to someone, whether it's your mom or your dad or somebody, who's a caregiver of some type in your life, then it's harder later on in life to actually be able to form those intimate relationships. So that's what they're talking about here. And they were saying, they're going through and just talking about what is attachment and what is bonding. And we were sort of left off with bonding. And they said, therefore, despite the genetic potential for bonding and attachment, it is the nature, quantity, pattern, and intensity of early life experiences that express that genetic potential without predictable responsive nurturing and sensory-enriched caregiving, the infant's potential for normal bonding and attachments will be unrealized. The brain systems responsible for healthy emotional relationships will not develop in an optimal way without the right kinds of experiences at the right times in life. So that's where we kind of left off. They said, what are these bonding experiences? That's the acts of like rocking, singing, feeding, gazing, kissing, and other nurturing behaviors involved in caring for infants and young children are bonding experiences. And they said that factors crucial to bonding include time together. Like in childhood, quantity does matter, they said here. Face-to-face interactions, eye contact, physical proximity, touch, and other primary sensory experiences such as smell, sound, and taste. And they said that scientists believe the most important factor in creating attachment is positive physical contact, like hugging, holding, and rocking. And it should be no surprise that holding, gazing, smiling, kissing, singing, and laughing all cause specific neurochemical activities in the brain. And these neurochemical activities lead to normal organization of brain systems that are responsible for attachment. Because that's just interesting to me to find, just to see the research and whatnot that they have done on this, right? It's so important that people, that parents, bond with their children and love their children and actively show that love, by holding their child and hugging their child and just, especially those early infant stages, those early years, and that's where you see a lot of parents, especially like parents who are struggling, having substance abuse issues or who just really get a child in the first place and just can't cope. There's lots of people out there who do not do this for their children. And I know when I came into the world, this is what I was talking about last week, was that my mom was like 38 years old. That's what I was talking about on Friday. My show was the sound was really not that good, so I don't know if people could actually hear what I was saying. But, my mom was not really wanting another child at the age of 38. Howard had already lost 2 before me. And then I came along, and she was miserable because my dad was forcing herself on her, and she really didn't want these kids. She kept popping out. And she was not happy to be holding us and hugging us and having us around, to have to look after. She really didn't want any more children. She didn't want the first children that she ever had, so she certainly didn't want the last ones. So she didn't want children. So she ended up with 7 children and 10 if they would have lived, or maybe even more. So it's really sad that people would do that. She had every opportunity to get on birth control or to use some sort of form of birth control. My dad should have not been forcing himself on her, but he was. And so, here they pop out all these kids, and then people would say, well, if they didn't, then you wouldn't be here. That's true. So what, if I complain that, my parents made a mistake because, they had us, then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to experience this life. I've actually never had people tell me that. And, that's true. That's very, very true. But does it mean I'm grateful for their behavior? No. I could have done a much better job bringing us up. They could have done a much better job to put their own hatred aside and put their own issues of this evilness in their own hearts, to say, look, we have these beautiful children. Even though we're not the most happily married couple, look at these lovely children that we have, and they could have brought us up a whole lot better, and they could have treated us a lot better. I know that none of my siblings, I don't believe that any of my siblings were actually. My mother was abused as a child. She really didn't. She had younger siblings because she was the oldest, and then my grandmother, used to take it out on her a lot of her frustration out on my mom. I believe my mom was like horse-whipped and just treated horrifically, and my grandmother would go to beat on the other children, and my mom would take the beating for them. So my mom was always kind of like stepping in to try to protect the younger kids, and so these younger kids actually thought that my mom was their mom. These aunts of mine, mainly it was these aunts that my mom's younger sisters thought that she was their mom, not my grandmother, because my mom was the one who would get almost all the looking after of these younger siblings of hers, right? So she had to look after all these kids growing up. So she was really mild, and she was, of course, they were all abused in that home, and my grandmother was this woman. And so then my mom goes to have children to show that kind of love or to show that kind of nurturing that was necessary. So, we missed out on that. We missed out on the, kissing and the hugging and the, the holding and just the gazing and just being happy she was not happy to be carrying us around. We were just a burden to her. We were just like, just this this little needy little creature that she was going to have to deal with, And so it's unfortunate that people, wouldn't see how beautiful it is to have this big family and say, man, look, we got all these awesome children. We should put our separate differences aside and let's just raise this awesome family that we have. But my parents were too ignorant to do that, and that's why I hold them in contempt today. A lot of people sit there. There's people that in my immediate family, which is not that many of us left, right, because we're almost all dead. But the few that are around think that, I should just be able to move past and move on, forgive and forget. My abuser dad actually told me that right around Christmas time. And that, it shouldn't bother me that much that we were not treated properly, that we were abused, and that our lives were made this miserable mess by these two stupid people, really stupid people, for doing what they did to their family. And, we're supposed to just be okay with it, right? No, this is absolutely ridiculous that anybody should be okay with that kind of behavior. My parents had every opportunity to show love towards us and could have brought us up in an awesome home. And, instead of that, made us pay because we were born. We had to pay for that. My mom would be like, I'm going to make you pay because you were born and you're just nothing but trouble to me. You're going to pay. And so I paid in every way. I paid physically. I paid verbally, emotionally, psychologically, in every way because my mom popped me out, right? It wasn't my fault that my mom popped me out. And, I'm supposed to pay for that? So I have been paying my whole life. And that's why I'm making them pay. Well, my mom's passed away now, so whatever. But my dad is still here on the earth, and I've actually chosen to cut him off. That is my way to say, I hold you in contempt, buddy, because you're not going to pay for this here on this earth, but you will pay later on down the road when you go to meet the Maker. And I believe that both my parents will pay in another judgment. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I don't see why I should go over there and kiss my abusive family's butt and just be okay with this whole thing. You know what I mean? Just to appease an abuser dad and a bunch of siblings who are in denial and who are living codependently amongst each other, who absolutely think that it's okay to abuse your children, right? They don't think there's anything wrong with that. They think there's nothing wrong with beating on your children, bashing your children with hammers, burning your children. They don't think there's anything wrong with that. They think that's okay. And, and I pointed this out to them. I said, look, Dad raped Mom. You guys know this. You were there, and you know that this was going on for years. And yet my siblings would sit there and say, well, it's no big deal. No, it is a big deal. I can't believe that my 6 siblings, 2 of my siblings are that mentally ill that they would think that that's okay, that my mom did not have a right to her own body and that my mom did not have the right to say no, right? No, that's really sick to me. So, see, I don't want to hang around with my dysfunctional, abusive, absolutely insane family. Forget that. You know what I mean? So, yeah, no, I know what's right and what's wrong, and I refuse to go along with what is wrong. You know what I mean? That is wrong, to go along with something just because it's what you've always done, because it's, even though you know it's wrong, but just to go along with it and not speak out against it is incredibly wrong, right? That's why abuse continues to happen, and that's why so many people allow abuse to happen within their homes. That's why people allow, parents, the other parent who is not the abuser will allow a child to be abused because they will not stand up against what is wrong. And they will not stand up for that child, right? So this is unfortunate, but this does happen all the time. And so, this whole bonding thing, like I didn't bond with my dad. I have no bond with him, period. And my mom, really no bond there either, except for I was wanting this bond. I was always looking for that bond with my mom because I really loved her and I wanted her. I was always kind of looking for her affection, for her approval, and I was never going to get it. It's hard because, you're growing up as a young child, and if you don't get that bonding, that attachment that you need, and you're still living with these caregivers, whoever they may be in your life, whether it's your parents or some caregiver, and you can't get that very necessary feeling of security and attachment, it does affect you. Eventually down the road, it can cause all kinds of problems. I was talking about that with my last week, mainly Thursday, Friday. My Thursday show never even did record, but I was talking about that with my brothers because they my brothers never did know how to form an attachment. Not even, they had a couple of friends when they were teenagers and stuff. They didn't have very many friends. They had some friends, but they had no girlfriends. My brothers did not know how to talk to girls. They did not know how to form any kind of relationships with people. They were brought up in the worst of the abuse. My older brothers, they were 7 years older than me, and 7 and 10 years older than me. So they're quite a bit older than me, and they grew up in the worst of the abuse, and they just didn't have a clue on how to form any kind of proper relationship with anybody, right? And they got involved in drugs and just spiraled downwards from there. And I think that later on, my brothers might have had some girlfriends, like later on in life, but they really didn't know how to allow people to be in their lives and how to keep these relationships going. And it's just because none of that was going on in our home. Nobody was showing us, how to be kind to each other, how to be good to each other, right? I mean, when our home was violent and very much evil, like hateful. Everybody was pretty much just hate bound. I mean, my parents were always fighting and I hate you, you son of a bitch, and throwing things at each other and beating on each other. And then of course that would spill over to the kids, right? Because we were both of my parents were abusers, not just one. And so it was really absolutely ridiculous that anybody would think that we would be able to form any kind of proper attachments or make any relationships later on down the road. My sister actually, every time she gets involved with a guy, it's abusive, and she doesn't know how to set boundaries. She doesn't know how to not allow herself to be abused. Right? Her first marriage was a mess. She ended up divorcing the guy, thank God, after so many years. But he was abusive, and not only physically abusive, but just emotionally abusive and everything else. And she finally divorced him, thank God. Right? We were very happy about that. But then she was in another relationship with this other guy not too long ago, who was also abusive to her, but not physically, but just emotionally, psychologically, just using her, really taking advantage of her. And she does not know how to set boundaries. She doesn't know how to not let people abuse her. So that's what living in our home did to her. Me, myself, I just decided I wasn't going to let anybody, I was not going to have a life like my parents. I said, there's no possible way that I'm going to go into my adulthood and carry on this life as the way it was for me in my whole life. Forget that. I said, so I kind of did put my foot down right away as a young adult, and even in my 30s and whatnot, and said, there's no way that I'm going to allow somebody to treat me the way that my parents, had been treating each other or treating us. I'm just not going to live with any more abuse, right? And so in doing that, it's been, I kind of didn't trust anybody. So I haven't had a whole lot of relationships really because I just didn't trust anybody. So, I kind of went the other way, sort of like, no, I'd rather not be in a relationship than be in one that's just going to be hurtful or harmful. But at least I know, you know what I mean, like to put to what I'm going to allow somebody to do and how I'm going to allow somebody to treat me. That's very important. Whereas I have that ability, for some reason, she doesn't have the ability to set boundaries and doesn't understand the boundaries and doesn't understand that you can set boundaries, right? She doesn't do any self-help or any work on herself, so she just, who knows what she'll end up doing with the rest of her life, but that's up to her. She's she is 50 now, so, I mean, she's old enough to know that if she needs to get help with things, then she does, right? But she's in denial, so whatever, But the thing is it's very important. All of this stuff, really, during infancy, it says here, if you read this PDF here from www.childtrauma.org, they said that the most important relationship in a child's life is the attachment to his or her primary caregiver, optimally the mother. And this is due to the fact that this first relationship determines the biological and emotional template for all future relationships. So healthy attachment to the mother built by repetitive bonding experiences during infancy provides the solid foundation for future healthy relationships. And in contrast, problems with bonding and attachment can lead to a fragile and emotional foundation for future relationships. So they said, when are these windows of opportunity? Timing is everything, they said. Bonding experiences lead to healthy attachments, and healthy attachment capabilities when they are provided in the earliest years of life. So during the first 3 years of life, the human brain develops to 90% of adult size, and puts in place the majority of systems and structures that will be responsible for all future emotional, behavioral, social, and physiological functioning during the rest of life. And there are critical periods during which bonding experiences must be present for the brain systems responsible for attachment to develop normally. So they said these critical periods appear to be in the first year of life and are related to the capacity of the infant and caregiver to develop a positive interactive relationship. So that's very interesting, right? It's like the very first year. They said, what if this window of opportunity is missed? The impact of impaired bonding in early childhood varies. With severe emotional neglect in early childhood, the impact can be devastating. Children without touch, stimulation, and nurturing can literally lose the capacity to form meaningful relationships for the rest of their lives. Fortunately, most children do not suffer this degree of severe neglect. There are, however, many millions of children who have some degree of impaired bonding and attachment during early childhood. And the problems that result from this can range from mild interpersonal discomfort to profound social and emotional problems. And in general, the severity of problems is related to how early in life, how prolonged and how severe the emotional neglect has been. So this does not mean that children with these experiences have no hope to develop normal relationships. Very little is known about the ability of replacement experiences later in life to replace or repair the undeveloped or poorly organized bonding and attachment capabilities. Clinical experiences in a number of studies suggest that improvement can take place, but it is a long, difficult, frustrating process for families and children. And it may take many years of hard work to help repair the damage that only a few months of neglected infancy, So that's just the whole issue, right? I mean, this stuff here between the ages of like 0 and 3, like newborn to 3 years old, has a serious on an adult's life. And we go through, that we have only a short period of time to be a child and a very long time to be an adult. And it's amazing the damage that's done in that short period of time just by ignorant people who don't know how to properly raise a child. There's so many people out there who I know have suffered in some type of abusive environment, you know what I mean? And it's absolutely ridiculous. The parents think that they should just be allowed to get away with this kind of garbage and that, their behavior is perfectly fine, I mean, my mom used to beat the shit out of us, especially me, and she would be like, that's my right, If I want to kill you, I can kill you. And she was serious about that. She'd be like, you're my child, and if I want to beat you to death, then I will. Because sometimes I'd be complaining, and I'd like, stop hitting me, telling her or whatever after she's beating the shit out of me. And she'd be like, oh, I can kill you if I want to. My mom did not care about her behavior. She thought that everything she did was just fine, you know what I mean? And my dad was the same way. He figured it was perfectly okay for him to behave the way that he was around the home, towards his wife and towards his children, and that everything should just have been okay. They don't realize the damage that they did, and that's exactly why I decided to go public with my story, because my two brothers went to their graves. It's not that I wanted to go necessarily do what I'm doing right now. This sort of just all came about because I wrote a public-facing blog and decided to go public that way. And then Dreamcatchers, Donna Shear, she's the president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, saw my blog and thought that it should be published. And there was a lot of people saying, you should publish that. That should be a book. But the thing is mainly what I wanted to do was get a plaque or some sort of a not-for-profit organization up here in Canada named after my two brothers who died up here. Mainly one lived himself, one hung himself, but it wasn't the first time he'd attempted suicide. A lot of people think that, maybe he made a mistake and didn't know what he was doing, but actually he had been trying to kill himself for years. But he knew what he was doing. He was just broke. And he finally made it without anybody helping him, because that's the thing. He used to get saved every time he would try to kill himself. And so this was the final time he finally made it. So my other brother died of a drug overdose up here. And he had been popping pills since he was 10 years old, 12 years old. And he used to die. He died on our kitchen floor one time. Back to life, but he was dead for 5 minutes. And a lot of his brain cells, of course, were gone. And he had all kinds of issues with, lost brain cells. He would get thrown out of the shelters because you can't be using drugs and be in the shelters. And they'd find drugs on him and they'd kick him out in the middle of winter. And he got frostbite and lost many of his fingers. And he had this horrible lifestyle. And we knew that one day we'd get a phone call, or we'd just never hear from him again, that he would be dead somewhere, right? And I love my brothers, and it's so sad that nobody in my family loved my brothers. My sister refused to acknowledge that they even lived and that they were even there. And not just them, but my brother Kevin, my brother Chess. My sister refused. She actually denied that she even had brothers because my sister was mentally ill. I mean, she grew up in the same home we did, and she was abused herself, and she was also very abusive to her children and her husband. She took on the role of the abuser like my mom, and I didn't like her that much when I was growing up. But she was sick. Obviously anybody who's going to deny their brothers like that is ridiculous. Who knows what happened really between them. I think my sister was just tired of the harassment from them, you know what I mean? But whether she was sexually abused, I don't know. All I know is that one of my brothers actually did sexually use me. And so there you go. The thing is that, the whole family like to look down upon all of the siblings and say, oh, it was just their fault. They were just losers. And you know who the losers were? My parents. That's who the losers were. See, that's why I'm doing these shows, and that's particularly why I wrote my book, because I want people to know that us siblings, the only reason why we did what we did was because of the home that we bloody grew up in. And I tell you, it frustrates me to no end that there's people out there that would say, oh, it was your brother's fault. It was just, you guys were just a bunch of loser kids, without even taking a look at the situation that our parents put us in and how we were treated as children, how we were brought up. And I thought, man, I remember so much stuff. So I'm going to actually spill the beans. And I don't care who likes it in my family. I don't care whose feelings it hurts. My nearly 90-year-old father who's mentally ill, whether he cares or not, I really don't care. He did not care putting his foot up everybody's ass when we were all growing up. You know what I'm saying? He did not care that he beat on his family, beat on his wife, beat on his children, treated his son so horrifically, and that he was brought up on abuse charges. And then there'd be people who say, "Oh, it was our fault. We were just a bunch of heathen kids, right?" No, we are already paid for that. It's already paid for being born, and I will not pay again for being born, right? So that's why I thought, no way, I've already paid the price for being born. My mother made me pay from the time I was born until the time she died, because I actually survived and made it. And, especially my mom. She was my main abuser, and she was horrific. And, I thought there's no way that I'm going to pay again as an adult and have to listen to the ignorance and the stupidity of these people who knew the situation in our family and yet would back up my abuser parents. There's no way, because what that does is makes me pay again, right? It's like, this is the kind of stuff that people have to go through. So that's why, if you've been through this and you're in this right now, and you're in an abusive situation, you make sure you get yourself some help, right? And if you're, struggling along and cannot cope, you do whatever you have to do. You call a crisis line, you call somebody, but you make sure that you do get some help and not ever, because this is my fight. I'm going to try to get this message out to as many people as I can. Not ever, do not ever give up, because we certainly did not deserve being abused, and we certainly deserve so much better treatment. And we have to do that for ourselves. So tonight, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, 9 o'clock p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. .com/Dreamcatchers. You can catch Ray Luskin and myself. We're going to be talking about love, nurturing, and learning how to take care of ourselves as adult survivors. That's on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here tonight. So be sure and catch that. And then I'll be on my own show after that. So have a great night, everybody, and a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. And remember to love yourself. You have to love yourself first if you're ever going to be able to love anybody else. I tell you that. And I had to learn how to love myself. It took me quite a while to do it, but I've actually mastered it. And so I hope everybody will learn to love yourself and learn to nurture yourself and take care of yourselves, really. If we were not shown how to do that, then sometimes we have to get help with that stuff, right? So make sure you do get some help if you need that help, right? Take good care, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.